Korean bell of friendship, more commonly known as the Korean friendship bell. This enduring symbol of friendship between the Republic of Korea and the United States was given to us for the bicentennial of American independence in 1976. We will take a look together at this magnificent cultural monument and talk about Korea's culture and history and how our two countries and nations are united in common spirit. Let us talk about the origin of the bell. In 1975, a group of Korean Americans who were living in Los Angeles visited the government of South Korea and suggested, since American bicentennial was coming up in 1976, that Korea should do something important and significant to show its friendship. Now, talking about this friendship that goes back far is probably an understatement. Korea and the United States had a relationship that goes back at least 100 years by then. But more importantly, in modern history, Korea's modern existence would not be possible without the bond between the two nations. Koreans thought long and hard, still a developing nation in 1975, struggling to meet the national per capita income of barely $100. But they looked far back into their history for something that would truly represent the depth and importance of their culture. So they decided upon this symbol, the divine bell of King Seongdeok, which was first forged in 771 AD. Now that bell is significant in a number of ways, in part because it was the first time in a long time in Korean history where the Three Kingdom period ended and became a one united country. But it was also the height of their culture, where the science and metallurgy had come together to forge a bell this large. This is an exact replica in terms of size and weight of the divine bell of King Seongdeok. It's about 3 meters tall and 5 meters in diameter and weighs 18 tons. And mostly made of bronze and nickel and copper and zinc and gold and silver, among many alloys. And it's designed as a marvel of a 1,000-year-old technology into the concept of harmony and peace. The bond between the Korean people and the United States is a very special one because it was American victory in World War II against Japan that liberated Korea from 35 years of brutal colonial rule. And a few years later, when the divided Korea broke into a civil war and North Korea invaded the South, it was the American allies and the United Nations forces that came to defend its freedom. As I have said, in 1975, Korea was still a struggling and developing nation with the goal of achieving a $1,000 per capita income. Single lifetime, the Korea has emerged into the 12th largest economy in the world, 3rd largest exporter of automobiles, and certainly one of the leading countries in the world. The bond between the two nations transfers into the purpose of dedicating this bell. The bell not only honors the friendship between the two nations, but it also remembers the sacrifice of the Korean War veterans that so bravely gave their lives to defend democracy and freedom in Korea. The bell is adorned with 4 pairs of figures. Each pair contains a goddess Liberty, symbolizing America, and then holding her hand is 4 pairs of Seonyo, or the Korean representation of angels. And how appropriate is it that we are here at the Angel's Gate in the City of Angels, commemorating that bond. The Korean bell is unique in that it actually has a clapper on the outside of the bell. And it's struck with this log and aimed at the flower symbol that is created at the sweet zone of the bell. The bell itself is forged in 4 different thicknesses. And underneath it is a reflector bowl, and then on top of it is a blowhole, also known as a yongtong or dragon hole. And if you look very carefully, there's a lattice structure that's designed to diffuse unwanted frequencies. So that is the science of ringing this bell. When you strike it, multiple frequencies are generated because of different thicknesses, and because of its tapered end, reflecting the sound into the reflector bowl, and then it oscillates inside. And what happens is, as different oscillation and different wavelength coincides and syncopates, some of the waves are accentuated and creates a unique phenomenon in Korean bell known as magnorum, or pulsation. And I'm going to demonstrate how this bell is struck, and then you will hear 4 different variation in tone. So it will actually start with a higher tone, and then it'll gradually wither down until actually the sound becomes louder. And I'm hoping the sound equipment can capture some of the low bass frequencies. And all of these are designed, as it was in the Divine Bell of King Seongdeok, designed to enlighten you by opening up all your energy centers. This low bass actually rising from the top, a pulsation. Each of the figurines were sculpted by Professor Kim Se-jung, who is one of the most renowned figures in modern sculpture in Korea, and he took cares to replicate the Statue of Liberty, or Goddess Liberty, and then a Korean figure for angel. And this one here is holding Eumyang, which is also the central symbol of the Korean flag. It represents the balance between the positive and the negative in the universe, symbolizing balance and harmony. Now, having said that, this large bell was cast by 9 surviving bell masters. And it's a daunting task, because it had been 1,000 years since Korea had forged anything this large. So the 9 bell masters got together, and they had to bring in about 20,000 workers that would actually hand carry the material and help them pour the molten metal into the mold in 2 tries. Because in modern day Korea, pouring 18 tons of metal is probably not that difficult a task. But in 1975, it was a great challenge. But they did it. And 1976, in January, when they cast it 2 steps, unfortunately, the bell cracked in half. So they had to rush and forge the bell again from scratch. And finally, on the 4th of July in 1976, the bell was rung for the first time in Busan before it was loaded onto a boat headed to America. Standing next to the symbol of peace, we're thinking about the 36,000 American men and women who gave their lives defending the people they never met, in a country they could barely place on the map. It was one of the poorest countries in the world, well below that of Cambodia at that time. So in 1950 to 1953, many lost their lives struggling to defend democracy, freedom for its people. Today, the bell is rung 5 times a year through an official ceremony. What we do each time we ring it through a public ceremony is also significant, because each time we ring it, it's almost like an act of prayer or offering. We're wishing wellness, peace, and harmony to all who hear it. And it wouldn't be complete if we didn't wish it on everybody. So we ring it 33 times, which is a significant number in Asian metaphysics, and certainly in Korean culture. So 33 means universality, because you have the 4 prime directions of north, south, east, and west, and then 8 side directions in between. So multiplying those together, you get 4 times 8, which equals 32. Then you come full circle to the center for the 33rd and final ring, which completes the full cycle and the desire for universality. This bell is actually housed in a concrete structure with 12 columns, which represents the 12 zodiac, each symbolizing a different aspect of the universe. The Korean Friendship Bell sits on a hilltop of a compound known as the Angels Gate Park. But before it was known as the Angels Gate Park, it was a part of a military facility known as the Fort MacArthur that was used both by the Army and then the Air Force. When the Korean government was seeking for an appropriate site to give this bell, then the council member and the council president of Los Angeles, Mr. Gibson, offered this site, which was actually in the process of being transferred over from the Department of Interior to the city of Los Angeles. When the representatives came and saw this magnificent 270-degree view, they were sold. But then there was yet another site to consider, which was atop the Griffith Park, which would then look down on all of the city of Los Angeles. But when they heard the name MacArthur, they said this was fate, because the site, Fort MacArthur, is named after the youngest lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, called Arthur MacArthur, who happens to be the father of Marshal Douglas MacArthur. Not only led the Allied forces in the Pacific to victory against Japan, but also led the UN forces in the Korean War. It was considered generally by all Korean people as its hero. So it symbolized to them a full circle of sorts when they found the site so appropriately named the Fort MacArthur, that they would return this site to erect a monument dedicated to the friendship between the two nations and to honor the veterans of the Korean War.
여기는 미국의 로스앤젤레스입니다. 미국 독립 200주년을 경축하기 위해 우리 정부가 제작해서 보낸 우정의 종이 우리 동포가 많이 사는 이곳 로스앤젤레스에 세워졌습니다. 우정의 종은 경주 박물관에 있는 공덕사 신종과 규모가 같은 것으로 한미 우호와 세계 평화를 염원해서 만들었으며 로스앤젤레스시 당국은 우정의 종이 세워진 이 일대를 공원으로 꾸밀 계획이라고 밝혔습니다.
The Korean Friendship Bell underwent a significant renovation, whereupon 30 artisans actually flew over from Korea and stayed on site for 3 months and worked night and day to restore this bell. But they also resurfaced the bell and fine-tuned it so that when we hear it today, that we can hear it as it was originally intended. And here's a little bit of karma and connection that we talked about earlier. The crew that came to restore the bell was led by a bellmaster, Che Dong-hee, who happens to be the pupil of the youngest surviving bellmasters among the 9 bellmasters who were involved in the original casting of the bell. Bellmaster Kim Chul-ho was the youngest, and he was already too old and frail to travel, and he handed the work over to his pupil, who came, and when the bell was rerung for the first time through a rededication ceremony, he said that he felt significant pride in being able to restore the bell, in part because of the connection he has with the bell and his teacher, but because his teacher had always said that this bell was like a child that he had given up for adoption, always worried how well it was doing, but little he had the ability to do something to restore it.
Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti made a personal commitment to ensure the Korean friendship bell never slips into disrepair again.
We've put up some physical barriers to birds. We've made sure that there's the maintenance that we can have around. So I feel very confident that we will. I think that it is the very least that we can do to say thank you for the kind gift a second time from the Korean people.
The Korean friendship bell rings only 5 times a year, including America's Independence Day, July 4th, and August 15th, Korean Liberation Day.
But today, it stands again as a proud symbol of that dedication and long-lasting connection between our people. So the structures behind me that you see were the structures that the original workers who came in 1975 to start building this bell and its foundation. They were here for a significant period of time, close to about 10 months working together, taking the rough stones that they had flown over from Korea, but carving it on site. They poured the concrete, they reworked the rebars, and all of the stone masonry that you see here today were created here on site. So it was actually an interesting attribute that when we actually had the restoration and the crew came in, they felt the same cold and roughness that those people have endured for a much longer period of time while they worked on this site. And we thank them again, the Bellmaster Che and all of the Bellmasters and stonemasons and architects and carpenters that worked so hard to build this great monument.